Ever feel like you're at a party where everyone's speaking a different language?
Yeah.
Like you're nodding along, but secretly you have no idea what people are saying.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like that awkward moment when someone tells you a joke and you're like, haha, yeah, but inside you're like, crickets.
Exactly. And today's deep dive is all about cracking the code of human behavior. We're tackling Thomas Erikson's Surrounded by Idiots.
Catchy title, right?
It definitely grabs your attention. But before anyone gets offended, it's not about name-calling. It's about those times when someone's behavior has us scratching our heads like, what in the world?
It's like Erikson's handing us those X-ray glasses we all wanted as kids, but instead of seeing through walls, we're seeing through people's, well, quirks.
Okay, I'm officially intrigued. So how did these X-ray glasses work? Give me the crash course.
So Erikson's big idea is that everyone operates on a different wavelength, which he calls colors red, yellow, green, and blue. We've all got a little bit of each inside us, but there's usually one dominant color that's like our home base, you know?
Okay, so less about putting people in boxes, more about understanding their, factory settings.
Exactly. Because once you can recognize these colors, you can start to predict how someone might react in a situation. Like, is this person going to charge ahead full steam or need a minute to process?
Okay, so let's break down these colors. Starting with red, paint me a picture. What makes these folks tick?
Imagine that friend who is always 10 steps ahead. You're still tying your shoes and they're already out the door planning the after party. That's red, energy, action-oriented, decisive, always going, going, going.
Ah, so like that CEO Erikson mentions who uses the bus lane to save time, results-driven, even if it ruffles a few feathers.
Bingo. It's not about being difficult. They're just wired for efficiency. Now, flip that script completely and you've got our green friends.
Greens. So are we talking like the opposite of red?
In a way, yeah. If reds are hitting the gas pedal, greens are pumping the brakes. They crave stability, harmony.
Hmm.
They'd rather walk on Legos than deal with a confrontation.
Okay, ouch, I felt that. But isn't there a danger in that? Like, what if a green is unhappy with something at work, but they're too afraid to rock the boat? Doesn't that just brew resentment?
That's a really good point. And the book actually talks about this. It's not that greens are passive. They're incredibly patient and will often try to, subtly steer things in the right direction without causing a scene.
So more like a silent but strategic resistance.
Yeah.
Okay, fascinating. We've got action-driven reds, peace-loving greens. Who else is on this color wheel of personalities?
Well, if you hear laughter bubbling up from across the room, chances are it's a yellow. These are our social butterflies, the ones who could make a boring meeting feel like a cocktail party.
Okay, fun. But they can't just be sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Okay.
What's the, catchphrase for yellows?
Here's where Erikson's insights get really interesting. He says yellows are hardwired to connect through sharing stories, ideas, you name it. It's not about being the center of attention, it's how they build relationships.
So a yellow who interrupts you constantly isn't being rude. They're just trying to, connect. That's a game changer. Okay, last but not least, tell me about blues.
Blues, they're like the architects of the personality world. Everything has its place, every detail matters. They're the ones color-coding their calendars and fact-checking your jokes.
Sounds intense, but I guess that also makes them incredibly reliable, thorough. Like if a blue is on the job, you know it's going to get done right.
Absolutely. The book really emphasizes that blues crave accuracy, logic. They're not trying to be difficult. They just need all the facts before making a decision.
Okay, I can already picture people I know in each of these descriptions. This is great.
Yeah.
But before I go full-on color-coding my contact list, you mentioned we've all got a mix of these colors, right?
100%. It's not about pigeonholing anyone. Think of it like, a musical scale. We can play different notes depending on the situation, who we're with.
Okay, so how do we figure out our own Canon dominant color? And once we do, what's the best way to use this knowledge? So last time, we dove headfirst into the colorful world of Surrounded by Idiots.
We met our four main players, right? The reds, the yellows, the greens, the blues.
Exactly. But now comes the really fun part, putting this knowledge into action.
Because knowing the theory is one thing.
Right. But out in the wild, it's a whole different ballgame.
Totally. So let's talk strategy. Say I'm face-to-face with a red. How do I get my point across without, getting run over?
$1 million question. It's
Yeah.
like they've got that need for speed, right?
Think of it this way. Reds are mental sprinters. Bullet points, not paragraphs.
Brevity is key.
Exactly. Erikson actually suggests framing things in terms of results. So instead of saying, we have a problem, you say, here's a challenge, and I think you're the one to conquer it.
Ooh, I like that. Appealing to their inner conqueror.
Yeah.
Very strategic. Okay, what about yellows? They seem like they could talk for days, so how do you keep them engaged without getting totally sidetracked?
Active listening is huge here, but with a twist. It's about, like, mirroring back of that enthusiasm. Ask those follow-up questions that show you're really on their wavelength.
So less about controlling the conversation, more about like, we're vibing together.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to gently nudge things back on track if they go on a tangent, because honestly, they probably won't even realize they've gone off course. They're just so busy connecting.
It's all about connection for those yellows.
Yeah.
This is making so much sense. Okay, greens. They seem like the trickiest to navigate because they're so averse to conflict. How do you address issues without sending them running for the hills?
With greens, it's all about building that trust, creating that safe space. Ditch the hard sell and focus on collaboration.
Come with me on this journey, not get in the car.
Right. Instead of dictating, ask for their input. Emphasize that you value their perspective.
We're in this together. I love it.
And here's a pro tip from the book. Greens hate being put on the spot, so give them that time to process. Let them come to their own conclusions.
Don't rush the green. Got it. All right, last but not least, how do we communicate effectively with our detail-oriented blue friends? I have a feeling they're not swayed by emotional appeals.
You're catching on. Logic is a blues love language. Data, facts, figures, they want to understand the why behind everything.
So less trust me on this and more, here are the spreadsheets to prove it.
Now you're speaking their language.
Yeah.
And honestly, don't be afraid to over-explain. They'd rather have too much information than too little.
Blues love a good deep dive. This is so helpful. It's like we've unlocked the cheat codes for human interaction. But I have to ask, what about when those colors clash? Like what happens when a red manager tries to motivate a team full of greens?
Oh, that's when things get really interesting because understanding these colors isn't just about one-on-one interactions. It's about navigating team dynamics, too.
Okay, so walk me through it. What are some of the most common color clashes we might see in a team setting? And how do we avoid them blowing up in our faces? So we've spent this deep dive decoding the colorful world of Thomas Erikson's Surrounded by Idiots.
We've covered those 4 personality types, right? The reds, yellows, greens, and blues, how to spot them, how to work with them.
Totally. But one thing that really stood out to me was how each color handles conflict. Because it's not just about disagreeing, it's about how those disagreements, like, play out.
Absolutely. Like, picture a red and a green, right? Head-to-head in a meeting. The reds, laser-focused on the bottom line, might bulldoze ahead with their ideas. Meanwhile, the greens over there, like, silently sweating, just wants everyone to get along.
It's like a communication train wreck waiting to happen. So how do we hit the brakes on that? How can understanding these colors actually help us, like, resolve conflict better?
Well, first we got to remember that conflict isn't always a bad thing. It's just like a difference of opinions or approaches. The key is channeling those differences in a way that's actually productive.
Okay, so less like a boxing match, more like a dance, where we're trying to find a rhythm that works for both partners.
Love that. And just like with dancing, communication is key, right? So with a red and green, you got to create that space where the red feels heard, but the green also feels safe enough to, actually voice their concerns.
So it's about setting those ground rules, making sure there's mutual respect, maybe reminding the red that, winning isn't everything.
Exactly. Now flip the script. Imagine a yellow and a blue going head to head. The yellow's got ideas for days, brainstorming up a storm. The blue might be feeling like overwhelmed, maybe a little dismissive, like, where's the method to this madness?
Oh, I've been in that room. It's like a brainstorming session gone rogue. One person's brilliant idea is another person's recipe for chaos.
100%. In that scenario, you got to create some structure for the conversation. Let the yellow have their say. They thrive in that creative chaos. But then gently guide things towards concrete action steps.
So it's like saying, we love your brainstorming, yellow, but let's work with blue to build a blueprint. Okay, this is eye-opening because it makes me realize that giving feedback, it's not one size fits all either. It's got to be tailored to those colors, right?
You got it. Let's say you got to give some constructive criticism to a red. Don't sugarcoat it. They'll see right through that. Just be direct. Focus on the behavior that needs to change.
So instead of saying, you really need to work on your patience, it's more like, hey, when you interrupt others, it slows us down, and I know you value efficiency.
Now you're speaking their language. And be ready to offer solutions, not just problems. Reds are all about action.
Okay, now how about those yellows? How do you give them feedback without, like, totally crushing their spirit?
Yeah, there are sensitive superstars.
Right. With yellows, it's all about balancing honesty with encouragement. Start by acknowledging their strengths, that positive energy they bring to the table.
We love your energy, yellow. Exactly. Then, when you do have to address something, make it constructive. Focus on growth, future opportunities, not dwelling on past mistakes.
So less you mess this up, more like how can we set you up for success next time?
You got it. And honestly, don't be afraid to make it a little fun. Yellows love an interactive approach, so maybe brainstorm solutions together or create a visual representation of their progress. Okay, your turn. How would you approach giving feedback to a green?
Greens. Okay, there are harmony seekers, so I'm thinking tread lightly, right? Lots of empathy, really careful with my wording.
You're getting it. Choose your words carefully. I statements, not you statements, which can feel super accusatory.
So instead of you're not speaking up enough in meetings, it's I feel like I'm not hearing your valuable perspective.
See, you've got this. It's subtle, but framing it as your experience, not their shortcoming, makes all the difference. And whatever you do, don't put them on the spot in front of everyone. Greens need that time to process, so a private conversation is key.
Got it. Privacy intact, essential for our green friends.
Ah.
Our final round feedback for our detail-oriented blues. What's the game plan?
With blues, bring on the data. Stick to the facts, give specific examples. None of that vague stuff or emotional appeals. They need concrete evidence.
So, like, if a blue is constantly missing deadlines, instead of saying, hey, it stresses me out when you're late, it's better to say, over the past month, you've missed 3 deadlines, which impacts the team's ability to stay on track.
Music to a blues ears. And here's the bonus round. Give them actionable steps for improvement. Blues love to problem solve, so if you can offer concrete solutions, maybe even a checklist they can refer back to, they'll be all over it.
This is amazing. It's like I've unlocked this secret decoder ring for, like, not just everyday conversations, but those trickier situations at work, too.
It's incredible how much smoother things can be when we take the time to understand the why behind someone's behavior instead of just scratching our heads at the what. Right.
Totally. So next time you're hit with that, what is this person doing? Feeling. Remember those 4 colors. And ask yourself, how can I use this knowledge to turn a potential communication disaster into, like, a real moment of connection?
Because at the end of the day, we're not surrounded by idiots, right? We're surrounded by unique individuals who, once we understand them, can become our greatest allies.
That is such a great point to end on. And that's a wrap on this deep dive into Surrounded by Idiots. Until next time, keep exploring those colorful personalities all around you.